Hello, I'm the Weasel, and today I'm going to talk about something pretty straightforward, just a basic thing. That's being white in China. Yeah, that's about it. So let's get started.
So China's a pretty homogeneous society, but at the same time not. There are tons and tons of subcultures and varieties of Chinese culture, not even counting the special ethnic groups of which there are around 56 or something. There are differences between these cultures and areas in China, that has to be said, but the difference is small compared to a country like Canada, where I'm from. Like in Canada, you have a history of many indigenous cultures, colonialism, dueling imperial powers, and waves of immigration. The differences in China are more like American politics. They only effectively have two parties, which is weird, but these are huge umbrella parties. A lot fits under the term Democrat or Republican. The idea of Chinese is kind of like that. There's a lot you're fitting into that, but in a way, it does fit together. But this does mean when you don't fit under this giant umbrella term, you really stand out. Being white in China definitely means you don't fit under that umbrella. Not fitting in China gives you a bit of fame in a way, but whether it is because you are a rock star or a freak is really up for you to decide. Personally, I like to think rock star. People are looking at you all the time. Sometimes they'll even ask you for a picture with them. You will be treated differently by people, by businesses, and definitely by the authorities. There are a lot of rules you have to be careful of, and while it's fine for a local to bend or ignore some rules, don't you dare. You have to remember that while you are away from your country, you represent that country. Not something you signed up for, but a reality. This is kind of worse in China because you don't just represent yourself or just your country, you represent all foreigners to a degree. If a foreigner is bad in China, it makes the news that a foreigner is bad. There's a part of the population that then blames all foreigners. Doesn't matter if that foreigner was from India, America, Germany, Uganda, Canada, Brazil, or Vietnam. Doesn't matter if they were of European descent or like American born Chinese. A foreigner was bad, you are a foreigner, all foreigners are bad. They just made it tougher for all foreigners. Yay! Thank you! Being a foreigner, and a white foreigner, isn't always bad in China though. A lot of Chinese people think that white people are very attractive. If we use the ever trustworthy and never subjective out of 10 scale for looks, you shot up about 2 numbers just for being white in China. Part of this might be because the most experience a lot of Chinese people have with white people or culture is from movies. So you probably look at least a little bit like some star, which makes you very good looking by association. The fun part, of course, is what stars they say you look like. I've had a couple where I can say, oh, I can see that. And I have some that is just like, are you serious? Examples, of course, include anyone who's bald or has only a little hair, like Vin Diesel, Jason Statham, Bruce Willis, all that. While one I can probably agree I'm very close to looking like is maybe Detective Poirot from the TV show, not the newer movies. This leads to something I actually enjoy seeing. Lots of double takes. The whole, wow, that really is a foreigner. You can't really blame them for that because from the last data I saw, there's under 1 million foreigners in all of China. Like 800,000 or something like that. And only around 20,000 live in the whole province of Liaoning where I live, which has at least 40 million people. Like, we're almost unicorns. But that leads to the next thing. People get really excited to see a foreigner sometimes. So some try out the English they learned in school, which they barely remember, because how much of a foreign language do you remember from when you were in school? You might get people randomly shouting out, hello! This really should remind you that you're doing something pretty amazing, living in a far-off country and experiencing things most people never get to. Not that it is always easy to think that way. I'll admit sometimes I've had a bad day, I'm in just a bad mood, you're fed up with it all, and it can be pretty difficult not to be snarly or snarky. Like, you can't always be happy and chipper when random people are calling out hello. At the same time, you should really do your best just to say hello back. That's really all they want most of the time. You do that, acknowledge them, wave, they're happy, you've made their day, the world's a better place. I have to say, for me, this might be a bit easier than some other people, because I'm a short guy, I'm tanned a little bit, I'm a bit darker than a lot of foreigners, so if I dress up, I kind of blend in a bit more than some tall, ghostly, white, blonde person. I've been talking about how adults react, but they really have nothing on how children react. Adults in most cities have at least seen foreigners around, and even most people from the countryside who have never seen one in the flesh don't want to cause a scene or be embarrassed most of the time. Children have none of that. There are two basic responses you get from kids, but they start off looking the same. The stare is the more common reaction. The kid will just stand there, staring at you. This can go on for a long time. If you are in a lineup or something, it can be really uncomfortable. The second reaction starts off with a stare, but at some point the quick kid decides you are obviously some child-eating monster and starts to cry or hide from you. You're often just left standing there, wondering what you could have possibly did, not understanding that it is in fact because you're definitely a white devil. This can change a little bit when you get kids who have been studying English, because they don't have the option to just stare or cry. Why, you might ask? Because there's no time to waste when you have opportunities like this. Grandparents or parents will push them towards you to get them to practice their English. Yes, I am talking about relatives pushing their kids at strangers. And what's wrong with that? So this poor kid is pushed towards someone they don't know to speak a language they may or may not know very well. It sometimes goes about as well as you think it will. Greetings are usually okay, because they practice that a lot in school. But then you're both wondering, okay, what do we say next? And you're often thinking about what you're actually doing that day, which did not include talking to random children. One of the earliest of these interactions that I've had was when I was getting a taxi. The conversation went something like this. Hello, how are you? I'm good. How are you? Fine, thank you. Then just silence. You have a big nose! I'll admit, I didn't know what to say to that. Like, I'd really never thought that my nose was that big before, but I guess in China it is bigger than the average local nose. This led to an uncomfortable silence that lasted until I got the taxi. I just had no idea how to reply, and the girl was just, okay, I did my piece. I'm hoping that her grandmother, who was watching, the grandparents are watching, don't worry. Okay? I think like she was probably testing her, so hopefully she passed the test, whatever this test really was. And I don't know if it's good to say or bad to say, but I think I've gotten better at talking to random children since then. Like, you get practice, so now I know, ask them about their favorite color, do you like dogs or cats, like stuff like that. Just basic English stuff so they can practice their English a bit more and look better for their grandparents. Basic question you get, of course, is, where are you from? And usually saying, I'm from Canada, I get some saying, it's a beautiful country or lovely place. They really like that. They're being polite. It's always nice to hear. The flip side of this is them saying where they think you are from, which is often America. The only time this got weird was when the woman asked, is he from America? She was talking to my wife. And went on to say, after she was told I was from Canada, she said, well, that's the same thing, isn't it? I can't say I was too happy about hearing this later when it got translated for me. But people do sometimes come up with some interesting guesses. One is I'm from Xinjiang, because people from there tend to be more pale than the average Chinese person, like they're basically white. And I guess a lot of people are thinking, it's more likely I'm running into someone from Xinjiang than an actual foreigner. But I've been called Spanish, German, French, British, and even Korean once. I don't really know what was up with the kid who said the last one. The one you get asked a lot about in the Northeast is if you're Russian, since we are closer to Russia and it is easier for Russians to come to China. Speaking of Russians, I can't talk about them without mentioning the Russnadians. So in China, if you're a white foreigner, there's really only four types of jobs you're likely to be working. The first is for a big international company. In Shenyang, it is the big car companies like BMW, so we do get a lot of Germans here. This is also why most foreigners live in big cities like Shanghai, Shenzhen, and Beijing, where a lot of international companies have offices. The second is much rarer, but someone who owns their own company or is in partnership with a smaller Chinese firm. The main ones of these I know are restaurant owners in Shenyang, but I'm positive there is other types. One that has been disappearing in the last 5 years, but was popular 10 years ago, is the famous white monkey jobs. Usually you didn't need to speak good English for these, because it's mostly, hey, we need a white face, it helps us sell our products, or makes us look more professional. So they'd pay a white person just to sit in the office all day. And well, look white. That was a thing for a while. Not sure if any are still around, but used to be able to get paid to be a foreigner in an office. The last type of job, which I think is the most common for foreigners in China, is of course a foreign language teacher, usually English. It is here where the Russnadians make an appearance. One day I might do a video on all the weirdness that goes with being an ESL teacher in China. But one big thing, of course, is English being your first language, which just makes sense. Like I said, it is easier for Russians to get into China, so there's more of them. But their first language is obviously Russian. Maybe you can see where I'm going with this. They want money, the schools want teachers. Sometimes they pretend to be Canadians to get that teaching job. Sometimes the schools pretend that they are Canadian to get more students. Why Canadian? I think it's because we're not well known for our accent. Maybe it's because we're another northern country, perhaps. Maybe it's because we do have a large amount of immigrants, including many from Ukraine, which may be an excuse for a similar accent, even though the immigrants from Ukraine mostly came to Canada over 100 years ago. Whatever it is, they water down the Canadian brand. I've been asked by students, are you really Canadian? How come you don't have an accent? Yeah, it is that bad. I'm not too impressed by it. Now let's go back to being a rock star in China, because there's definitely some benefits to being white in China. People get excited that a white person is around sometimes. Many people want to show off China. They are proud of their country and they want to be hospitable to you. They're like, hi, foreigner, you are great. Let's be friends. Can't say that I complain about this. It's not something you'd really get if you're a Chinese person just visiting another part of China. This is something you get even in your hometown. People being, hey, let's be friends. I'll show you around Shenyang. I'm like, okay, I've lived here for 5 years, though. Restaurants can also be great for this. They want to show off their food, and having a foreigner coming in may, or may not, boost business. Sometimes you'll get a small side or a cheap plate for free, a little something extra just for being there. This is amazing, but rare. Like, don't expect it. But be very happy when it does happen and always say thank you. It's not always rosy, though. There are some disadvantages to being white in China. Most of the jobs I mentioned earlier pay pretty good, or at least above average in a lot of provinces in China. The other thing they'll probably think is that you're a tourist. Long story short, people assume you have money, so you're a mark. They think you're new to China and naive. This may or may not be true, but it means scammers will come after you. The two most famous scams are the black cabs, which are usually unregistered taxi services from train stations or airports. They'll at the very least charge you many times the actual price of the trip and often not even take you all the way there. Keep away from them. Make sure you only get taxis from proper places in airports and train stations. If they approach you in the airport or station, tell them firmly you're not interested. And I've lost my temper with them a few times when they don't back off. The other famous scam is the tea scammers. I've never actually had to deal with this one. But the basic setup is they meet you at a tourist spot and take you to a place for an authentic tea ceremony. Then charge you a mint. The other big disadvantage isn't so much of a scam, just as a sad fact of being white in China. This is white prices. A lot of old-style markets don't list prices, and some even allow you to haggle. But soon as they see your white face, your price has been marked at least 3 times higher than the normal price. If you're on your own, you don't really have many options. You can either go somewhere else or go to a place where the prices are actually marked. If you're with a Chinese person, though, it's best just to send them in alone to get you stuff. Like, they'll get a better price anyways, and usually they know how to haggle, where a lot of us foreigners don't really know how to haggle well, if at all. I'm going to point out that this is different from tourist traps that are like tourist traps everywhere. Those are expensive to everyone. Doesn't matter if you're a foreigner or not. This leads to another problem that has come about since the situation of the last 2 years. China has done amazingly well with how it has dealt with stuff in the last couple of years, while a lot of the rest of the world has been a bit messy, not having the tools China has to deal with the problem. So on the news, you keep hearing about how it's so bad beyond the borders. Then they talk about how there are people coming in, bringing the problem with them. This leads to the logic of, if you're foreign, you're a threat. Nowadays, you can get into China if you enjoy 2 or 3 weeks of quarantine, lots of tests, and probably the need to be vaccinated. But for a long time, if you were white and in China, it meant you were here from before everything went down. That doesn't matter. You get people doing that double take I mentioned before, but this time, they move far away from you after that. You get people switching seats on the bus or train. You are the danger, which doesn't really make you feel too great. But this is a topic for another time as well. So moving on, there's sort of a backhanded advantage to being white in China, and that's the language barrier. Most of the time, this makes your life much more difficult if you haven't learned any Chinese. And don't be like me. Try to at least learn some Chinese before coming here. It will make your life so much easier. But not knowing the language can help you out sometimes. Get you out of tough situations or whatever. The magic words are bu zhi dao, which means I don't know, or bu ting dao, which means almost the same. These can be wonderful little phrases. I'm kind of being charitable and saying it is me pretending to be stupid to get my way or get out of a situation. But often, no, I am actually just stupid and have no idea what is going on. Like, you can only guess so much from the context of what someone's saying after all. A lot of times you're just like, I really don't know what you're saying. Please leave me alone because I'm just confused and getting more and more confused and lost. Hopefully you learned something from all this. I'm not sure what you may have learned, but hopefully something. That's all for now. Please like, share, subscribe, and comment down below. Later. 再见.